the special aspects of Cambodia, one of the reasons why it was important for us to go there, is unlike a country like Indonesia, Cambodia is one of those places where you don't hear a lot about. The issues that are happening and that are unrolling there are just not being talked about outside of Cambodia.
We are in the Cardamom mountain range, and we're saving an ecosystem here. The flagship species are the elephants and the tigers, the Indo-Chinese tiger, but it's also 34 globally endangered and threatened mammals in this incredible area. We're putting our arms around one forest and trying to keep the ecosystem going and all the species that are in it. Land management, grabbing of land on forest estates, stopping district governors from selling land illegally under the table. And we have to work at the grassroots level through ranger patrolling all the way up to central government to help the departments coordinate sustainable development. In flying over this vast expanse of forest, you can actually see the success, because as soon as you fly out of the boundary of the project, you see forest that is burned, has been degraded, is no longer dense evergreen forest, and an enormous amount of conversion to economic and industrial interests. Our most pressing concern right now is the mine. Okay, we're now over the mine area. It's in front of us. Wow. Right below you. This titanium mine is very big. It's 20,400 hectares, which in acres is about 60,000 acres. And it's all strip mining, which means that people will not be employed to go down into a hole and work underground, but they will be employed to bulldoze basically the whole forest and take off the soil and divert the rivers, and there will be heavy pollution going downstream. It's also in the middle of the elephant corridor. The company has gone in basically with motorbikes and shovels and about 10 workers and has dug inside the soil in 9 locations to be exact, and has come up then with a statement. And real exploration is a minimum of 6 months to maybe 18 months, with hundreds, if not thousands, of drilling holes, and actually analyze the concentration of ilmenite, which is the ore body for titanium. That has obviously not been done by the company.
I'm David Boyle. I'm the web editor at the Phnom Penh Post newspaper. Well, we first started hearing about the mining project last year. Considerable concern about a very large project, so we then went and probed to find out how big that project was. It took quite a while to get in contact with the United Command Group, but when we did, they explained to us that this was going to be a significant project. It would in fact be the biggest mining project in Cambodian history.
To keep for the camera first, because we want to talk first. But here time to talk with you, but now is not right time for talking, okay?
And so we wanted to investigate that, given the scale of the claim they were making. 135 billion potentially in titanium ilmenite. It seems like we would have heard about this before.
It's an extraction process that is fairly costly. In this case, the company has not done their due diligence and has not done their exploration and is trying to go ahead with exploitation right away, which means that they might have a business fiasco. But while they're going in that direction, they would have permission to log all the trees in the area, which represents a huge amount of luxury wood. When you think of one species, which is called Kronyan wood, is sold $20,000 per cubic meter to China.
I'm sure that timber is valued quite highly, but I can't assert that that is, their intention. But you have to ask why it hasn't gone forward yet. Is the project viable? If it is, then it's surprising that it hasn't gone forward yet. It's been some months since that announcement was made that there were these significant deposits.
Chipat is also not just any village. Chipat has gone through the horrors of the war during the Khmer Rouge regime. In the case of Chipat, 800 villagers were taken to a killing field in a place called Tmar Domre and were exterminated. Chipat has gone a long way. Since we started working with the village in 2004, the province of Kokong, the whole cardamom corridor, was called by Lonely Planet one of the top 10 destinations for ecotourism, and Chipat as the best example of community ecotourism in Cambodia. We are working very closely with the government and the local people to ensure that the thriving ecotourism business will not be destroyed, and if the mine is not profitable and decides to close, then there will be no more jobs for anyone.
Chipat is the best ecotourism destination of Cambodia because Chipat have best nature and have the best forest. Now there's a mining company coming, and the royal government of Cambodia is paying very close attention on the problem. Under the leadership of Samdech Techo Hun Sen, the government is taking serious consideration. I think the government now is standing at a very fair position. Before making any decision, the government will need a serious study. As now, the government have give a permit to the company to study over an area of 30 meter by 30 meter. We need to see, is it better to leave it for some time, like 10 or 20 years. However, it doesn't matter how or where the mine is, the government will think seriously about the benefit of local people. Especially, the government need to keep the river not polluted and need to try to protect the fishery in the river. The government is taking serious consideration on the impact over the livelihood, and it will take a good decision. And it has a great interest in protecting the nature without losing any forest, because natural resource is the life of his people.
It's a place that's particularly challenging because the rule of law right now, government is relatively weak, and understanding the problem is part of it, but understanding how you can actually strengthen government is an extremely important part of it.
Well, the mining site was about an hour-and-a-half motorbike ride through dense bamboo forest on the back of a driver who was wearing flip-flops and navigating some pretty treacherous terrain. So we had heard a story that a Korean investor had pulled out of the mine project after he had taken this very same motorcycle track. When we got to the mining site, it was proclaimed by the mining company to be a very low-value bamboo forest. And what we noticed when we arrived there was that, yeah, there might have been some bamboo in the foreground, but really we were surrounded by a really rich, densely populated tropical cloud forest. Everyone was wearing fatigues at the mine site. They were carrying semi-automatic weapons, and all we were doing is looking at a map in the grass. I mean, I do that all the time here in Washington, and no one's surrounding me with weapons and protection. So there was a certain element of fear in what we were doing and the resistance that we brought to the mining effort and the need for protecting us in our active resistance. So I think that, it made everything feel a little charged.
Mines and hydropower are an economic priority for Cambodia at this point of their economic development. Opposing a mine is not always a good idea and certainly not an easy thing to do.
It's understandable that the country wants to develop. Cambodia is still very poor. It hasn't been a very pleasant history over the past, let's say, 40 years, and they would argue along the same lines as many other developing countries that they absolutely have a right to develop their resources. In terms of the actual legislation that exists, Cambodia has a mineral resources law that dates back about 10 years. There's no mining tax law. That's a problem. A big question when you start seeing resource extraction projects take place in a developing country is, where's the money going to go?
This one I not right to talk with you now. We just talk with the boss, okay? Because you are the big guy.
What is your name? I'm sorry.
Here's two. My name is two.
what we've seen so far, the glimpse we've seen, there's a lot of people in there working. NGOs, they're not working to strengthen the government and the institutions as a whole. They're in there basically almost as triage to make sure that, you know, this forest doesn't go under now. Well, that's fantastic, but in the long term, that's not going to solve the problem. How you use the law and how you can strengthen the law in the institutions in Cambodia is going to be a very important part of what we do there.
When you don't have a judiciary that is open and transparent, and you don't have a government that's divided and branches are protected from one another and insulated, you end up with a country where a small bribe can really achieve a devastating impact. Creating rule of law protections is going to be instrumental for strengthening Cambodia. Now, the reason people aren't focused on this is because it's a long-term investment. It's 10, 20, 30 years down into the future. You make a huge investment now and you don't see the payoff for a long time.
One of the examples of the challenges in a place like Cambodia is, you know, we go over there and we hear, and everyone is telling us that there's no way this mine will ever be approved. And people who have been studying this for a long time were saying that, and people who live there. And within a couple of days of us being back, we hear it's been approved. And the whole process, governmental process for this approval to happen was just all trashed, basically. It's extremely important to keep this team together. This is really, I think, the only group I know of that's bringing a representation of law, environmental issues, scientists, journalists together to explore, understand issues, and educate people both outside of a region like Cambodia and within Cambodia, helping them craft long-term solutions to these really challenging problems.